Hello, welcome to Uday Kiranalu. The present topic is clauses. What is a clause? A clause is a group of words which contains a subject and a predicate and forms part of a sentence. That means a clause contains a subject and a predicate and it is a part of a sentence. Now, types of clauses. Basically, there are two types of clauses. Number one, main clause or independent clause. Number two is subordinate clause or dependent clause. The main clause stands as a complete sentence on its own, whereas the subordinate clause doesn't. Example: Ravi was able to climb trees when he was young. Ravi was able to climb trees. This is a main clause or independent clause because it gives us complete sense. Whereas, let us have a look at this one. When he was young, it is not a complete sentence. It doesn't give us complete sense. So, it is a subordinate clause or dependent clause. It depends on the main clause for its meaning. Note: a dependent clause generally begins with a conjunction such as if, that, when, why, what, before, after, etc. Let us take this example. I love books as they give us knowledge. Here, the underlined part with a straight line, that is, I love books, is a main clause. The part that is underlined with a corrugated line is a subordinate clause. The subordinate clause here is as they give us knowledge. Now, defining and non-defining relative clauses. What is a defining relative clause? It defines the person, place, thing, etc. we are referring to. For example, the person who is standing near the board is our English teacher. Here, the person is our English teacher is the main clause or independent clause because it gives us complete meaning. Who is standing near the board is the subordinate clause or dependent clause because it doesn't give complete sense. It depends on the main clause for its sense. So it is called a subordinate clause. Here, this subordinate clause is called a defining relative clause because this clause is defining who the person is. So here, the antecedent is person. The subordinate clause defines its antecedent, that is person. Next, the place where I play daily is very near to our house. The place is very near to our house is main clause or independent clause because it can stand on its own and it gives us complete sense. And where I play daily, the sense is incomplete here. So it is a subordinate clause or a dependent clause. Here, the antecedent is place. The subordinate clause refers to the place. Now, relative pronouns are adverbs. A relative pronoun relates to the person, place, thing that goes before it, that is, antecedent. Who, whom, whose, that refers to persons. Which, what, that refers to things. When refers to time, where refers to place, why refers to reason. These are adverbs. Note, these relative pronouns also act as conjunctions. That means these pronouns connect two sentences. What is a non-defining relative clause? A non-defining relative clause doesn't define its antecedent. It just gives extra or additional information. For example, Mohan, who is my neighbor, is a gentleman. Here, Mohan is a gentleman is the main clause or independent clause. Mohan is antecedent. Who is my neighbor is the subordinate or dependent clause. Next, Wings of Fire, which is written by APJ Abdul Kalam, is a famous book. Wings of Fire is a famous book is the main or independent clause. Which is written by APJ Abdul Kalam is a subordinate or dependent clause. Note, a non-defining relative clause is separated from the main clause by commas or hyphens before and after it. So here a non-defining relative clause doesn't define its antecedent. That means without this clause we can understand who the person or thing is. For example, Mohan is a gentleman. Here the name is clearly mentioned. So we don't need who is my neighbor. If we use who is my neighbor here, we are just giving some extra information. And Wings of Fire, which is written by APJ Abdul Kalam, is a famous book. Here, which is written by APJ Abdul Kalam, doesn't define the book Wings of Fire, because without this clause we can understand what the book is. So these non-defining relative clauses are separated from the main clause by using commas or hyphens before and after it. Now, exercise. Name the clause and antecedent. The first one, the movie and Wings of Fire, which is written by APJ Abdul Kalam, is a famous book. Here, which is written by APJ Abdul Kalam, doesn't define the book Wings of Fire, because without this clause we can understand what the book is. So these non-defining relative clauses are separated from the main clause by using commas or hyphens before and after it. Now, exercise. Name the clause and antecedent. The first one, the movie that is being shown on TV now is an old one. The movie that is being shown on TV now is an old one. Name the clause and antecedent. Right, it is a defining clause and the antecedent is movie. Now the second one. Morally, who is the SPL, is very intelligent. Name the clause and antecedent. Yes, it is a non-defining relative clause and morally is the antecedent. Next one. The book which is on the table is mine. What is the clause here and what is the antecedent? Yes, it is a defining relative